You guys, this story sounds so fake it's ridiculous, but I swear it's 100% true. HOA called 911 when my wife moved in, and what happened next will leave you speechless. Just 3 minutes later, she found herself on the receiving end of something she never saw coming. You won't believe the lengths this so-called neighborhood authority went to, all because we dared to settle into our new home. But here's the twist. It wasn't just about parking tickets or rules. It's about what happens when someone oversteps in ways they can't undo. You'll want to hear how this played out. Drop your thoughts below. What would you do in our shoes? I'm Rocker, 35 years old, and I've been living in Meadowbrook Hills for 3 years now. It's one of those neighborhoods where every house looks almost identical, 28 homes total, with perfectly manicured lawns and the kind of quiet that makes you think everything's normal. My wife Anna had just moved in with me after we got married, and she works as a pediatric ICU nurse saving babies' lives. That's literally all you need to know about us to understand how absolutely insane what happened next really was. We're just normal people who wanted to live our lives without drama, but apparently that was asking way too much. The day Anna moved in, I noticed a woman 3 houses down, writing in a notebook and watching us. Not subtle about it either, just straight up stalking us from her living room window. I'm not even sure why I didn't find it creepier at the time, but maybe I was just focused on helping Anna get settled. Around 5 in the evening, this woman knocked on our door with the confidence of someone who owned the entire street. No hello, no welcome to the neighborhood, no normal human pleasantries. Just straight business delivered in this clipped, authoritative tone that immediately put me on edge. She claimed our truck violated parking rules, being 24 feet in a 20-foot zone. Anna asked politely where she could read about these rules, and I swear this woman's face changed like Anna had personally slapped her across the mouth. The transformation was so dramatic, I actually took a step back. She said she didn't need to show us anything because she'd been managing this community for 15 years, and her tone suggested we should be grateful for her dedicated service. Looking back, I should have known right then that we were dealing with someone who had completely lost touch with reality. Anna asked for an email copy of the rules, which seemed completely reasonable, but this woman, who we later learned was named Vera, got this look that I can only describe as suspicious mixed with annoyed. Vera told us we'd get our copy and that we'd get real familiar with their violation system soon, and there was something in the way she emphasized real familiar that made my skin crawl. After she left, Anna had this expression I'd never seen before, like when she's studying critical patient data at the hospital and something doesn't add up. She told me that woman wasn't trying to help us, she was hunting us. And I asked what she meant by that because Anna doesn't get paranoid about anything. She's the most logical person I know, so if she's worried, there's usually a damn good reason. Anna explained that some people get off on control and they find targets who look easy to push around, like young couples new to the neighborhood who don't know the rules yet. Anna pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of everything around our house. The mailbox, the landscaping, our car, even the way our trash cans were positioned. When I asked what she was doing, she said if Vera wanted to play games, we needed evidence of how everything looked right now before she started making things up. I thought Anna was dramatic, but she started recording the conversation with Vera. She said something told her we were going to need these recordings, and I'm not sure if I was impressed by her foresight or worried about what kind of neighborhood we'd moved into. That night, I saw Vera outside her house talking on the phone and staring directly at our place, not even trying to hide it. Anna squeezed my hand and told me this was going to get worse before it got better, but not to worry because she'd dealt with bullies before. When I asked if she meant in nursing school, she said life and death situations teach you things about staying calm under pressure, gathering information, and fighting back when you absolutely have to. I had no idea what she meant at the time, but I was about to find out the hard way. The next morning, Vera was in her yard at 7 in the morning, measuring the distance between our mailbox and the street with an actual measuring tape, like some kind of suburban surveyor from hell. Anna watched from our kitchen window and said Vera was building a case against us. The question was for what? The pole outside became my morning newsstand. Always the same headline, always unsigned. Anna read the first one carefully with the same intensity she gets when a baby in the ICU takes a turn for the worse. She told me we weren't dealing with an HOA volunteer. We were dealing with someone who turned harassment into an art form. When I asked how she could tell, she said these violations didn't actually exist anywhere, and Vera was making up rules as she went along. Anna opened her laptop and started typing furiously, telling me it was time to do some research. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment Anna started building the case that would destroy Vera's entire world. Over the next few days, Anna dug through county records and HOA regulations. She was building a plan, but watching her, I felt uneasy. Part of me still wanted to believe this was some petty mix-up, but my gut was already pacing with worry about what we'd gotten ourselves into. Anna's research was methodical and thorough, like she was preparing for a life-or-death medical procedure rather than dealing with a neighborhood dispute. The way she organized her files and cross-referenced everything made me realize this wasn't just about defending ourselves anymore. This was about something much bigger, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what Anna was planning to unleash on our unsuspecting neighbor. But that was just the first step in something much larger, and she wasn't alone. Over the next week, we got hit with 4 separate violation notices, and each one was more ridiculous than the last. Day 1 brought an improper mailbox height citation, claiming ours was 2 inches too tall, which seemed impossible since it was the same height as every other mailbox on the street. Day 3 was unauthorized garden decorations, because Anna had put out a small garden gnome that was maybe 6 inches tall and completely adorable. Day 5 was non-compliant exterior lighting, targeting our solar pathway lights that were identical to the ones 3 other neighbors had. Day 7 was excessive vehicle presence, claiming Anna's car was supposedly parked wrong, even though it was in our own driveway. Each notice demanded a $200 fine, bringing our total fake debt to $800. I was ready to either pay or confront Vera, but Anna had other plans. Most people would either pay up or get pissed off, but Anna did neither. Within days, Anna had built a digital folder labeled Vera Phase 1, and it was already 2 gigabytes of evidence. When I told her she was going full detective mode over garden gnomes, she explained that when patients come into the ICU, you don't guess what's wrong, you document symptoms, run tests, and find patterns. Same principle applies here, she said, and I had to admit her logic made sense even if it seemed like overkill at the time. Anna spent her days off researching county records, property laws, and HOA regulations online, diving deep into stuff that would bore me to tears but seemed to energize her completely. That's when the real suspicion kicked in. Something about her tone felt unsanctioned. She showed me county records on her laptop proving that this HOA hasn't filed proper paperwork with the county in 5 years, and half the rules Vera quoted didn't exist anywhere in any official document. According to the records, the HOA board hasn't even met in 18 months, which meant Vera had zero legal authority to fine anyone for anything. When I asked if we should just ignore her, Anna said we could do better than that by letting Vera dig herself deeper. Anna started casually talking to other neighbors, not gossiping, but just friendly conversation, and what she found out was absolutely insane. Mrs. Anderson told Anna that Vera made them pay $300 because their fence was supposedly the wrong color, and they repainted it twice trying to make her happy. Can you imagine spending your weekend repainting a perfectly fine fence because some self-appointed neighborhood cop decided she didn't like the shade? The guy across the street said Vera threatened to put a lien on their house over a bird bath, an actual bird bath, and they ended up removing it just to get her to leave them alone. Our next-door neighbor mentioned that her kids can't even play in the front yard anymore because Vera files noise complaints if they laugh too loud. Anna came home with pages of handwritten notes documenting Vera's years-long harassment campaign against multiple families. She'd been doing this for years, targeting people, making up violations, and collecting money while nobody fought back because they didn't know their rights. When I asked how much money we were talking about, Anna pulled out a calculator and started doing math that made my jaw drop. If Vera was averaging $500 per household per year times 28 houses over 5 years, that's $70,000 that went straight into her personal bank account instead of actual HOA improvements. Looking back, I still can't believe nobody had caught on to this scam before we moved in. But I guess that's how bullies operate. She mentioned someone named Mr. Rosner, said he used to fight like you, but I never found his name on any mailbox in our neighborhood. Vera must have noticed Anna talking to neighbors because the violations got way more aggressive and creative after that. We got hit with unauthorized home modifications for hanging a bird feeder, disruption of community aesthetics for having patio furniture on our own patio, and violation of quiet enjoyment because we talked in our backyard after 7 p.m. Each fine jumped to $300, bringing our total fake debt to $2,400, according to Vera's increasingly unhinged calculations. Instead of paying or arguing, Anna started studying Vera's behavior like she was analyzing a difficult medical case. Anna noticed that Vera walked past our house exactly 6 times every day, always with that creepy notebook, always taking photos with her phone like she was building evidence for some kind of federal case. She told me Vera wasn't just enforcing fake rules anymore. This had become completely personal, and she set up our security camera to record Vera's stalking patrols as perfect evidence of harassment and stalking behavior. Anna spent her days off researching harassment laws, HOA regulations, and consumer protection statutes with the intensity of a woman possessed. She explained that there are actual federal laws against fake authority, demanding money under false pretenses, and systematic harassment campaigns. And if she could prove pattern and intent, well, let's just say Vera was going to get exactly what she deserved. When I asked if she was seriously going to sue Vera, Anna's smile was ice cold in a way that made me realize I'd never seen my wife truly angry before. Week 4 brought Vera's most aggressive move yet. A final warning email demanding we pay all outstanding violations, totaling $2,400 within 72 hours, or face immediate legal action, including property liens and possible foreclosure proceedings. Anna read it twice, then started laughing like a maniac, which honestly scared me a little. When I asked what was so funny, she explained that Vera had just committed a federal crime by threatening foreclosure without legal authority, which is textbook extortion, and she'd literally just handed Anna everything needed to destroy her completely. It was like standing in a house with a bad foundation, solid until the floor shifts. Anna's research was complete after 3 weeks of meticulous documentation, neighbor interviews, and legal precedents all organized in color-coded binders that looked like something you'd see in a law office. She told me she knew exactly what Vera was going to do next, because bullies always escalate to authority figures when they're losing control, thinking it will validate them and scare people into submission. The next morning, a drone hovered outside our bedroom window, carrying a fresh violation. After the uniform confrontation, Vera's behavior crossed from annoying straight into genuinely frightening territory that made me question whether we were dealing with someone who was completely unhinged. She documented everything, like we were enemy operatives instead of neighbors. 7 a.m. brought photos of Anna leaving for work, noon brought pictures of our mail delivery, 3 p.m. brought videos of me mowing the lawn, 6 p.m. brought notes about what we had for dinner based on our grocery bags, and 9 p.m. brought complaints about our excessive indoor lighting. It felt like being under surveillance by the most obsessive agent, and I grew paranoid walking to the mailbox. She stood at the edge of the driveway, clipboard tight like a shield, voice steady from rehearsed authority. Our neighbor started timing her walks for entertainment because she was like clockwork with the same route, same stops, and same creepy staring every 47 minutes. I'm not even sure why she thought this was normal behavior, but Mrs. Brooke mentioned that Vera asked her 12 different questions about our visitors the day before, wanting to know who comes over, how long they stay, and what cars they drive, which was making everyone really uncomfortable. Anna used our security system to record Vera's stalking patrols, and within a week we had hours of footage showing her obsessive behavior that was definitely borderline stalking and absolutely perfect evidence for federal court. Looking at the compilation Anna made, you could see Vera photographing our license plates, taking pictures of our windows, and even trying to record our private conversations when we were in the front yard. That has to be illegal, right? I asked Anna, who confirmed it was borderline stalking, definitely harassment, and absolutely perfect evidence for what was coming next. Vera's creativity with fake violations reached completely absurd levels that would have been funny if they weren't so disturbing. We got citations for things that made no sense, like unauthorized pet presents for a neighbor's cat, improper waste management because we put our trash out 30 minutes early one week, disruption of neighborhood harmony because Anna laughed too loud while talking to her sister on the phone, and unauthorized recreational activities because I threw a frisbee to myself in my own backyard. Each violation now cost $400, bringing our imaginary debt to $6,800, according to Vera's completely detached from reality calculations. The HOA was a ghost, no registry, no tax number, no legal spine. She told me Vera had given us everything we needed and more, including pattern of harassment, false authority claims, extortion attempts, stalking documentation, and financial fraud evidence. But we needed to wait for her to cross the final line by involving law enforcement in her harassment campaign. Anna pointed to her detailed escalation chart, showing how every week Vera got more desperate and aggressive, explaining that bullies always overreach when they realize they're losing control of the situation. Digging deeper, Anna found court records from Oregon. Someone with the same last name had been fined for impersonating an HOA authority in 2016. Vera started trying to recruit other neighbors as allies in her personal war against us, organizing an emergency HOA meeting that only 3 people bothered to attend, and posting about us on the neighborhood social media group, calling us disruptive newcomers who refuse to respect established community standards. Seriously? Did she really think that would work? She even called Anna's workplace trying to file complaints about her unprofessional behavior, which backfired spectacularly when Anna's supervisor learned that someone was harassing one of their best pediatric ICU nurses. The whole recruitment strategy completely backfired because people were getting fed up with Vera's constant drama. One neighbor told us Vera came to his door asking if he'd sign a petition to force us to move out of the neighborhood, and he told her she was completely nuts and to leave us alone. I wish I could tell you I kept my cool when I heard that, but come on, who wouldn't be furious about someone trying to get you kicked out of your own home? Another neighbor was even more direct, telling Vera that if she kept harassing us, she'd call the police on Vera herself, which was apparently the first time anyone had ever stood up to her in 15 years. Her screen glowed in the dark room. She didn't speak, her lips tightened with every new tab she opened as Anna researched Vera's personal background through property records, business licenses, and social media history, building a complete psychological profile. She discovered that Vera used to be a real estate agent but lost her license 3 years ago for ethics violations involving systematic client harassment, which explained her obsession with property values and her need to control other people's lives. That can't be right, can it? I thought when Anna showed me the state licensing board records, but there it was in black and white. Week 6 of Vera's harassment campaign brought violations arriving multiple times per day, sometimes 3 different citations in a single afternoon for completely made-up infractions that existed only in her increasingly unhinged imagination. Our fake debt reached $12,600, and Vera was writing us up for things like excessive happiness levels disrupting community solemnity because we literally smiled too much in our own yard. Anna planned her next move with surgical precision, telling me she was going to wear her scrubs outside one more time to water the plants and check the mail, completely normal activities that any reasonable human being would ignore. When I asked what would happen if Vera actually called the police, Anna said that's exactly what she was counting on. Because when Vera called law enforcement to harass a healthcare worker for doing normal activities after saving children's lives, she'd cross the line from neighborhood nuisance into federal civil rights violation territory. Tuesday evening arrived with Anna coming home from a brutal 12-hour shift in the pediatric ICU, still wearing her scrubs and completely exhausted from literally saving premature babies' lives all day and night. All she wanted was to water her plants and decompress from the stress, but Vera was waiting for her like a spider in its web. We had her cornered, but people like Vera don't fold, they double down. Officer Martin glanced at Vera with confusion, clearly wondering why he was called away from real emergencies. "Ma'am, you called 911 emergency services because your neighbor is watering plants?" he asked, and I could hear the disbelief in his voice. Vera became defensive and increasingly frantic, insisting that Anna was violating established community standards by wearing medical uniforms in residential areas and that she had full authority to enforce neighborhood regulations. Officer Johnson, the second cop, looked at Anna standing there in her hospital scrubs with a watering can and asked if she worked in healthcare. When Anna confirmed she was a pediatric ICU nurse who'd just finished a 12-hour shift, saving premature babies and wanted to water her plants before they died from the heat, the 2 officers exchanged one of those looks that clearly said they'd been pulled away from actual emergencies for complete insanity. Vera's voice got higher and more desperate as she insisted Anna had been deliberately harassing the entire neighborhood for weeks with violation after violation, and she yanked out her stalker notebook to start reading our supposed crimes to the police. Improper mailbox height, unauthorized decorations, excessive noise levels, disruptive vehicle presence, inappropriate uniform display, she rattled off like she was reading charges in a courtroom. Officer Martin cut her off. "That's not what I asked you. Do you hold any official position with legal authority over these residents?" he said, and for the first time since I'd known her, Vera hesitated. "Well, no, but someone has to maintain proper order," she said, and I actually had to stop and stare at her after that admission because she'd just confessed to impersonating authority to 2 police officers. As Vera justified her fake authority, Anna stepped forward with the sealed envelope she'd prepared. "Ms. Vera," Anna said with perfect calm, "you're being officially served with legal documents." Vera took the envelope like it might contain anthrax or explosives, and when she saw United States District Court printed across the header, all color drained completely from her face in what had to be the most satisfying moment of the entire ordeal. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked, and Anna replied that it was a federal lawsuit for harassment, extortion, stalking, impersonation of authority, and civil rights violations. You know those moments in movies where someone's whole world collapses in slow motion? This was that moment happening in real life, right in front of us. Officer Martin asked Vera if she'd just been served, and when she confirmed, Officer Johnson turned to Anna for details on the lawsuit. Anna pulled out a perfectly organized folder like she was presenting a critical medical case and explained 6 weeks of systematic harassment, fake violation notices demanding over $12,000 in completely illegal fines, stalking behavior including unauthorized photography and surveillance, and tonight's misuse of emergency services to continue her harassment campaign against a healthcare worker. I've shared plenty of crazy neighbor drama stories here on QA Stories over the years, but nothing quite prepared me for what was about to happen next. Anna handed comprehensive documentation to both officers. Photos of Vera stalking our house and taking pictures, screenshots of dozens of fake violation notices, audio recordings of Vera's threats and illegal demands. Officer Martin flipped through the evidence package with growing amazement. "This is incredibly thorough and comprehensive documentation." Anna explained that as a healthcare professional, detailed documentation can literally mean the difference between life and death in the pediatric ICU, and in this case, it might mean the difference between justice and letting a neighborhood bully destroy innocent people's lives. I kept staring at the evidence. What if she had backup? What if we didn't have enough? But watching Anna's confident presentation, I realized she'd built something bulletproof. Vera's defense completely disintegrated as she shouted desperately about maintaining property values and community standards, insisting that someone had to enforce basic neighborhood rules and regulations. Officer Johnson's tone got serious and official as he asked if she had any legal documentation showing authorization to collect fines from residents, and complete silence followed. When he asked if she had proof that any HOA board gave her permission to patrol the neighborhood and issue violations, more uncomfortable silence filled the air. Officer Martin explained that collecting money under false authority is fraud in their state. Calling 911 for non-emergency harassment is misuse of emergency services, and the evidence suggested an ongoing pattern of stalking and systematic harassment that could result in serious criminal charges. The police cars and flashing lights had attracted attention from the entire neighborhood, and people started coming outside to see what was happening to their longtime tormentor. One neighbor approached the officers hesitantly to ask if this was about Vera because she'd been harassing their family for over 2 years, and others joined the conversation, sharing how Vera made them pay hundreds of dollars in completely fake fines because they didn't know they could fight back. Another neighbor mentioned that Vera had been stalking us for weeks, taking pictures and following us around, and the whole neighborhood had been getting really uncomfortable watching it happen. One woman added that she'd told Vera last week that if she didn't stop harassing us, she'd call the police herself, and it was clear that Vera had burned every bridge in the community. Realizing that the entire neighborhood was turning against her and the police weren't buying her act at all, Vera started having a full-blown meltdown that was both pathetic and terrifying to witness. "You're all ungrateful. I've spent years maintaining this community, keeping property values high, fighting to preserve standards and order," she screamed. and Officer Martin told her to calm down right now. When she refused and continued ranting about how we were destroying everything she'd built, and this was a respectable neighborhood before these people moved in and started causing problems, Anna stepped forward calmly to request adding threatening behavior and public disturbance to the harassment complaint. Officer Johnson addressed the crowd of neighbors who'd gathered, asking if anyone had ever voted for Vera to represent their HOA in any official capacity. Nobody raised their hand when he asked if anyone had seen official documentation authorizing her to collect fines or patrol the neighborhood, and every single neighbor shook their head no when asked if anyone gave her permission to take photos of their homes or monitor their daily activities. The realization hit Vera like a freight train at full speed when she understood that nobody supported her, nobody had ever voted for her, and nobody wanted her protection or management of anything. She'd spent years thinking she was the neighborhood's hero and savior, when in reality she was everyone's worst nightmare. And Mrs. Brooks spoke up gently to say that property values actually went down because people were afraid to move here, since word gets around about neighborhoods with problem residents. As the police finished taking statements and writing their reports, Vera stood alone in the street under the streetlight, holding those federal lawsuit papers like they were her death sentence. But as I watched Vera's broken silhouette disappear into her house, I couldn't shake one terrifying thought about what desperate people with nothing left to lose do when they're completely cornered. The next morning, a bright red for sale sign marked Vera's surrender, and Anna and I were having coffee when we saw her frantically loading boxes into her car with the desperate energy of someone fleeing a crime scene. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight, and Anna observed with clinical detachment that Vera was running, which is classic bully response when they can't intimidate people anymore. But houses take time to sell in this market, which meant Vera was trapped living 3 doors down from the people who were about to legally destroy her entire life. And I wasn't sure if that made me feel satisfied or worried about what she might do next. Anna's lawyer called with an update, explaining our documentation was the most comprehensive he'd seen in a harassment case, and they were filing in federal court under civil rights statutes covering false imprisonment, rights deprivation, and conspiracy to violate civil liberties. When Anna asked about the timeline for resolution, he said with evidence this solid and clear-cut, Vera would probably try desperately to settle within 60 days because nobody wants to go to federal trial when they know they're going to lose spectacularly. Anna smiled with deep satisfaction and said she wanted this resolved quickly so we could get back to living normal lives without constantly looking over our shoulders. Over the next week, Vera tried every single desperate move in the failing bully playbook, starting with hiring an expensive lawyer who lasted exactly 3 days after reviewing all the evidence because there were too many clear violations and absolutely zero possible defense strategies. Every new citation made the last one seem rational, but now she was sending them to everyone on the street, not just us. She attempted rallying neighborhood support by posting a long manifesto on social media about newcomers destroying established community values, but her posts got more desperate and no one cared. She even tried filing counter-complaints with the police about us harassing her, but the same officers who had responded to her 911 call basically laughed her out of the station. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about Vera's years of fake authority and illegal fine collection, and the actual HOA board, which hadn't met in months, called an emergency meeting that Anna and I attended along with most of the neighborhood. The community center was packed with people who finally felt safe to speak up about their experiences with Vera's reign of terror. Board President Mike opened with a public apology, explaining they had absolutely no idea Vera was impersonating HOA authority and that she had never been authorized for any enforcement activities whatsoever. The board voted unanimously to ban Vera from any future HOA involvement and sent official cease and desist letters to her legal representation, which felt like justice finally being served. At that same meeting, neighbors finally felt safe to share their horror stories publicly for the first time, and the pattern became crystal clear as people described years of systematic harassment targeting anyone who wouldn't submit to Vera's imaginary authority. Mrs. Anderson was forced to repaint her entire house twice, costing over $3,000 chasing Vera's constantly changing approval standards. Another family had to remove their kids' playground equipment because children laughing was allegedly noise pollution that disrupted Vera's afternoon meditation sessions. which sounds completely insane when you say it out loud. One woman's 16-year-old son was reported to police for skateboarding in their own driveway because Vera claimed it was reckless endangerment of community safety, and another family was harassed over a ceramic garden gnome. Anna's lawyer discovered that Vera had collected over $40,000 in completely fake fines across 5 years, money that vanished directly into her personal bank accounts without any HOA oversight or approval, which meant she'd been operating an extortion racket disguised as community management. The IRS got involved when they realized Vera had never reported any of the fake fine income on her tax returns, making federal tax evasion charges a real possibility on top of everything else she was facing. Without Vera's reign of terror hanging over everyone, the neighborhood actually started improving dramatically as people began socializing freely again without fear. Kids played outside without worrying about harassment, and neighbors helped each other instead of hiding from patrol schedules. Anna was ready to act. One move, and it was over. Property values increased 15% in just 2 months once word spread that the crazy HOA dictator was being permanently removed, which was the ultimate irony considering Vera always claimed she was protecting our investments. 6 weeks after being served, Vera's newest lawyer, her third one, called with a desperate settlement offer of $15,000 in compensation with an agreement to relocate outside the neighborhood within 30 days. Anna's lawyer countered firmly with $60,000, all legal fees, written public apology, and permanent no-contact agreement with anyone in this community. And when Vera's lawyer said she couldn't possibly afford $60,000, Anna's response was that she shouldn't have spent 5 years committing federal crimes against innocent families. Vera's heels clicked, but no one looked up anymore as she walked past houses where people used to cower behind curtains. Unable to afford a settlement and facing a federal trial she couldn't possibly win, Vera had one last spectacular breakdown when she showed up at our front door at midnight, clearly drunk and screaming about how we'd destroyed her life and ruined everything she'd worked years to build. Anna calmly called the police, and the same officers responded as before to find Vera violating the restraining order and disturbing the peace. As Officer Martin handcuffed her, Vera sobbed pathetically about how we'd destroyed her entire community and everything she'd built, but he explained that she'd done that to herself through her own choices, which was probably the first time anyone had held her accountable for her actions in years. Vera spent that night in jail for violating the restraining order, while her house went into immediate foreclosure proceedings, and her remaining friends abandoned her entirely, leaving her completely alone to face the consequences of years of terrorizing innocent families. Anna and I watched from our window the next morning as bank representatives arrived to repossess Vera's belongings, and everything she'd tried so desperately to control was slipping away from her in what felt like poetic justice. When I asked Anna if she felt bad for Vera at all, she considered the question thoughtfully and said she felt bad that Vera chose this destructive path for herself, but didn't regret stopping her from continuing to hurt innocent families with children. Every time I turned around, Anna was finding another smoking gun, and this time, we had a legal arsenal that would end this nightmare permanently. But even with our complete victory and total vindication, I couldn't escape one nagging realization that haunted me about how many other neighborhoods were suffering under their own version of Vera's tyrannical rule. Vera's fourth lawyer in 2 months called with total capitulation and unconditional surrender, telling Anna's lawyer that his client accepted all our demands without modification, including $60,000, full legal fees, written public apology, and permanent no-contact agreement with us and all neighborhood residents. When Anna's lawyer pressed for complete clarity about relocating outside the community within 15 days, Vera agreed to everything because she just wanted this resolved before it went to federal trial and became public record that would follow her forever. Anna hung up the phone with deep, lasting satisfaction and told me it was finally over, but I needed to understand how Vera was possibly paying $60,000. Anna explained that Vera was using house sale proceeds, liquidated retirement accounts, and borrowing against her car title, which meant she was financially destroyed for years to come. The settlement required Vera to post a detailed public apology on the neighborhood social media group, plus handwritten copies mailed to every single household, and the letter was absolutely excruciating to read, as she formally apologized for harassment, stalking, and extortion of residents while admitting she had no legal authority to enforce rules, collect fines, or patrol the neighborhood. She accepted full responsibility for her actions and the damage she caused while agreeing to permanently relocate with zero future contact with this community, and watching her forced to admit everything publicly was more satisfying than I'd expected it to be. Anna's case was airtight. Every detail, every conversation, all lined up perfectly. The evidence was overwhelming, the case was ready, and Vera's face drained as the moment of realization hit hard. Anna didn't keep all the settlement money for ourselves, but established a reimbursement fund for neighbors who'd paid Vera's fake fines over the years, redistributing $30,000 to victims while keeping the remaining amount for our legal fees and emotional damages. Mrs. Anderson got back her $3,000 in unnecessary house painting costs. Another family recovered money spent removing perfectly legal playground equipment. One family received compensation for years of harassment targeting their teenage son. And another got reimbursed for therapy costs after Vera's campaign made the wife afraid to leave the house. With Vera permanently banned and gone, the actual HOA board implemented comprehensive reforms to prevent any future neighborhood dictators, requiring all rules to be voted on democratically by residents, prohibiting individuals from acting as enforcement officers without official board approval, and conducting annual independent audits of all HOA finances and activities. Anna was elected to the board unanimously, and her first official act was creating a detailed harassment prevention policy with real legal enforcement mechanisms that would protect future residents from anyone trying to pull Vera's scam again. Moving day for Vera was absolutely pitiful to witness, as everything she owned in the world fit into a small moving truck and her beat-up car, with all the neighbors watching from their windows as she loaded her belongings completely alone with nobody helping, nobody saying goodbye, and nobody pretending to care. As she drove away from our neighborhood for the last time, Mrs. Brooks started slow clapping from her front porch. Then others joined in until the entire street was applauding her permanent departure, while someone shouted, "The neighborhood witch is finally gone forever!" It was happening, and there was no turning back from the justice we'd fought so hard to achieve. Anna and I watched from our front porch, and I expected to feel triumphant, but mostly felt profound relief that this nightmare was finally ending, though I wondered if Vera learned anything from this whole experience. Anna said probably not, because people like Vera never think they're wrong about anything, and she'd probably blame us for ruining her life, instead of taking responsibility for her own destructive choices, which turned out to be exactly right based on what we heard later. Without Vera's reign of terror hanging over everyone, our neighborhood transformed completely and dramatically as kids rode bikes in the street again, without fear of harassment. Neighbors chatted over fences like normal human beings, and people decorated their houses however they wanted without constantly looking over their shoulders. We installed the bird feeder Vera had banned as a major violation, and it attracted beautiful cardinals that the whole neighborhood enjoyed watching and photographing. 6 months later, Anna and I were featured in the local newspaper with the headline, "Couple Defeats HOA Harassment Through Strategic Legal Action." And the story inspired harassment victims throughout the city to fight back against their own neighborhood bullies, using similar documentation strategies and legal approaches. Anna started getting regular phone calls from people dealing with comparable situations, sharing our proven methodology of documenting everything meticulously, understanding your legal rights, staying professional under pressure, fighting intelligently instead of emotionally, and never surrendering to bullies. Through mutual acquaintances in the neighborhood, we heard about Vera's post-lawsuit existence, and it was pretty rough as she moved to a strict apartment complex where tenants have zero control over anything with no gardening allowed, no decorating permitted, and no personalizing your living space whatsoever. She complained constantly about the restrictive rules, but had absolutely no power to change anything. Her finances never recovered from the legal costs and settlement, as the payments, lawyer fees, and foreclosure completely destroyed her credit rating permanently. And she tried getting her real estate license reinstated, but the state ethics board denied her application, citing documented pattern of harassment and abuse of authority. Looking back at everything that happened, I keep wondering if Vera got exactly what she deserved, or if we should have shown more mercy to someone who was clearly struggling with control issues. But Anna told me one evening while we were enjoying our peaceful backyard, without any harassment, that she doesn't enjoy watching people suffer, but bullies create their own consequences through the choices they make consistently over time. When I asked if she ever regretted fighting back so hard against Vera, Anna said never for a single second, because if we hadn't stopped her with legal action, she'd still be there systematically terrorizing families with young children. Anna was completely right, because by the time we'd moved into the neighborhood, Vera had been systematically tormenting residents for years. And if we hadn't fought back with proper legal intervention, she'd probably still be there making innocent people's lives miserable while collecting thousands of dollars in fake fines. Our neighborhood became known throughout the city as one of the most exceptionally friendly and welcoming communities. Property values continued rising steadily. Young families with children actively sought houses in our area, and everything Vera had claimed to want for the neighborhood actually happened after she was permanently removed. The key difference was that it happened through genuine cooperation and mutual respect instead of intimidation and fake authority. And Anna and I had learned something crucial about standing up to bullies: that you don't have to accept abuse just because someone claims to have authority over you. This was it. And I knew Vera wouldn't go down quietly, but we had already won the war that mattered most. I'm recording this exactly 1 year after Vera called 911 on my wife for watering plants while wearing medical scrubs, and our neighborhood is completely unrecognizable in the absolute best way possible. Vera's former house was bought by a young family with 3 adorable kids who absolutely love Anna's garden and constantly ask her for growing tips and advice. And instead of harassment letters and violation notices, we get thank you cards from neighbors whose children Anna has helped save at the pediatric ICU. Instead of living under surveillance and constant intimidation, we have monthly block parties, community barbecues, and genuinely friendly neighbors who actually look out for each other, which feels like we're living in a completely different world than the one Vera created through years of systematic harassment. The truth spread fast. Neighbors emerged, no longer afraid to live their normal lives without looking over their shoulders constantly. Remember how Vera was always obsessed with protecting property values and maintaining rigid community standards? Our neighborhood home values increased 22% this past year, which is the highest increase in our entire city. And it turns out families desperately want to live in friendly, welcoming communities where kids can play safely, not authoritarian police states run by wannabe dictators with fake authority. Real estate agents throughout the area now literally use harassment-free neighborhood as an actual selling point in their listings. And I'm not even kidding about that, because Anna showed me multiple online listings that specifically mention our community's transformation from problem area to highly desirable family neighborhood. Anna became our area's unofficial champion and advocate for harassment victims everywhere, successfully helping 12 other households fight back against HOA bullies, abusive apartment managers, and neighbors who think they have some kind of authority over other people's lives, with a success rate of 100%. Every single case has been resolved in favor of the harassment victims using the same strategy that works every single time, which Anna explains to people who contact her for help. Document everything comprehensively. Understand your legal rights thoroughly. Stay professional under pressure, fight strategically instead of emotionally, and never surrender to bullies no matter how exhausting it gets or how much they escalate their harassment campaigns. Our story spread far beyond just our immediate neighborhood, as Anna gets regularly invited to speak at community meetings throughout the region about dealing with harassment and abuse of fake authority. And she's helped draft model HOA bylaws that prevent future bullies from taking over communities and systematically terrorizing residents. 3 other neighborhoods in our city have used our exact legal strategy to successfully remove their own problem residents who were harassing and intimidating families, proving that this approach works consistently when people have the courage to fight back. Last we heard through the neighborhood grapevine, Vera was living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment across town, working part-time at a customer service call center, with her dreams of community leadership and control over others completely dead and buried forever. Her power to intimidate and harass neighbors is legally prohibited by federal court order. Her ability to collect fake fines and terrorize families is permanently destroyed, and she created a permanent federal legal record against herself that will follow her for the rest of her life. Any future HOA or community organization can simply search her name online and immediately find all the court documents detailing her harassment convictions and restraining orders, which means she'll never be able to victimize innocent families again. Vera was done. There was no redemption for her after what she'd put so many people through over the years. For anyone currently dealing with their own neighborhood bully situation, here's exactly what actually works in real life, based on our experience and the dozen other cases Anna has successfully resolved. Document absolutely everything comprehensively, including photos, audio recordings, precise timestamps, witness statements, and written communications, because most HOA bullies rely completely on people not understanding actual laws and regulations. Research and understand your legal rights thoroughly. Stay calm and professional, always, no matter how much they provoke you, because emotional reactions give bullies ammunition to use against you later. Fight intelligently and strategically instead of emotionally. Because legal pressure and comprehensive documentation work infinitely better than screaming matches or physical confrontations. Never back down or give up, no matter how exhausting it gets, because bullies count on people eventually getting tired and surrendering to avoid continued harassment, and gather community support whenever possible, because most neighbors are also victims who are simply afraid to speak up individually. The absolute best revenge against Vera wasn't destroying her life, though she accomplished that entirely through her own choices and actions, but building the exact type of community she always claimed to want, but was too controlling and authoritarian to actually create. The fear lifted, the neighborhood was alive again with genuine happiness and cooperation, instead of fear-based compliance with fake authority. Looking back, I knew it was the only thing we could do when faced with someone who was systematically destroying innocent families' peace and happiness for her own twisted sense of power and control. Anna tells me regularly that people exactly like Vera exist literally everywhere in HOAs, workplaces, community groups, volunteer organizations, and school boards, using fake authority and systematic intimidation to control other people's lives. But the secret is early recognition and stopping them before they gain real power and cause serious long-term damage. Anna and I discovered we're much stronger and more resilient than we'd ever realized or imagined, and we learned that fighting injustice isn't just about protecting yourself, but about protecting everyone who comes after you and everyone who's currently too afraid to fight back themselves. We learned that bullies and harassers are usually much weaker than they appear when you challenge them directly, with proper documentation and legal pressure. And most importantly, we learned that regular people absolutely can defeat systematic harassers when they work together strategically and use the legal system correctly with comprehensive evidence instead of just hoping someone else will solve the problem for them. Our HOA board actually functions democratically now, with real meetings, real votes, and real accountability to all residents instead of fake dictators collecting illegal fines from intimidated families. And neighborhood children play street hockey and ride bikes freely without fear of harassment or made-up violation notices. If you're dealing with your own harassment situation right now, don't suffer in silence hoping it will magically get better on its own, because it won't. And don't try to reason with bullies or appeal to their better nature, because they don't respond to logic, kindness, or attempts at compromise. Document their behavior meticulously and fight back through proper legal channels. Don't give up when the process gets difficult, expensive, or emotionally draining, because legal systems work when you use them properly, with solid evidence and professional help. Get professional legal help, because you absolutely don't have to fight these battles alone. And remember that bullies and harassers always create their own destruction. Eventually, you just need to help document it comprehensively and speed up the inevitable process. Vera called 911 thinking she'd finally gotten rid of the troublemakers who dared to challenge her fake authority and systematic harassment, but instead, she handed us the final piece of evidence we needed to permanently get rid of her and end her years of terrorizing innocent families. And with that, we were free. It was over.